How do you stay in your space bravely? Because the definition of doing something and being brave is that doing something where you can't predict the outcome. That's what brave is. Because it's not brave if you can predict how it's going to end. And anything that we do in this entrepreneurial space is brave.
Many people want to navigate life with peace and joy, but struggle to connect to their intuition. They find themselves overwhelmed, burned out, and frustrated. My name is Francesca Phillips, and I'm obsessed with spirituality and psychology and how the two can intersect to help you live a successful and intuitive life. I believe each of us can accomplish amazing things through balance and healthy habits instead of burnout. Consider this your go-to resource for where spiritual wellness and mindful productivity meets practical wisdom. If you're craving positivity and want to know how to find the answers within instead of searching endlessly without, then you're in the right place. Get ready to feel supported and inspired. This is the Good Space Podcast. You're listening to the Good Space Podcast, episode number 8. Before we dive in, I want to give my warm appreciation to our reviewer of the week, Kimby Bimby. And they say, such a great find. I love that this podcast merges spirituality and actual steps that you can take to use in your everyday life. Francesca gives great examples and explains the concepts well. I definitely will recommend it to my family and friends to introduce them to these concepts. First of all, love that nickname. Thank you so much, Kimby Bimby, for your kind words and support of the show. I am so grateful for you. If you want to be highlighted in an upcoming episode and help further the mission of the Good Space, make sure to subscribe and give us a review on Apple Podcasts so I can then highlight your review in an upcoming episode. It only takes a minute. You can pause the episode and come right back. Make sure to screenshot this episode on your phone and tag us on your Instagram story at @FindYourGoodSpace, #TheGoodSpace, to let me know that you're joining in today, as you know that I love to share those screenshots on our stories too. I'm excited to chat today with Dr. Jody Carrington. She's a speaker, author, and overall game changer. Jody is the best-selling Canadian author of Kids These Days, a game plan for reconnecting with those we teach, lead, and love. She's a child psychologist by trade, and over the past 15 years has learned that empowerment in our children starts with those who hold them. Through her work treating families with some of the most difficult stories, she realized that we are wired to do hard things, and that we can handle those hard things much easier when we remember that we are wired for connection. She says the biggest challenge facing each of us these days is that we've never been more disconnected, making it harder than ever to determine if we really, truly matter in this world. Let's jump right in.
I still can't believe that people pay me what they pay me to stand on stage and tell them the things that I tell them, because it is not rocket science. If you want healthy relationships in your life, you stay connected. If you want healthy relationships in your life, you focus on you first. If you want to be better than you've ever been, then you've got to take it one day at a time. And I know all of those things. It's like when you get out of it, oh my gosh, how easy it is to just think into that. Like, I don't know what to do. Why do I feel so motivated? Or so I'm motivated. And I'm like, right. You don't need no motivation. You need discipline.
Yes, it's so true. Like sometimes it's not a matter of having to keep learning or like do. It's just like, just be disciplined. So yes, I love that. But yeah, so we met at Rise Business Conference, which was so fun. And it's actually really, it makes a lot of sense to me now that when I looked you up, I was like, oh, you focus on connection and like well-being. Because when we were in line together, I think we were getting a drink or something. I remember you were just so much fun. You had so much energy. And I'm like, I want to be with that group. You know what I mean? I tried to get my way into talking with you. And it was just, you were just so fun and such a riot. And so anyways, I'm really glad to be sharing you with my audience. And yeah, I guess we'll just jump right into it. So what does well-being mean to you?
Oh my gosh, that is the best question. So I think that what you just said is so important. We were both at that conference for the same reason, which is really what I think everybody is seeking is connection to like-minded people. I think we just want to know that we matter, that we're worthy, that we have something to contribute to the world. And when we feel like that, it's like almost being drawn to a light. You know, you want to spend more time there because you feel confident, you feel connected, you feel welcome, you feel like you found your passion, your purpose. The closer you get to those things in your life, I think everything starts to vibrate on a level that makes sense. So you sleep better, you are more motivated, disciplined, whatever the word is, to get up and look after your body and look after the people you love. And make space to meditate or to write in a journal or to do all those things that are going to really serve you well. And I think that's, for me, what well-being is the more that I am in tune with, aligned with my purpose, my passion, like just really feeling that visceral sense of like, let's go. There is not enough time in the world for me. I will change when I'm so steadfast and brave in my space. I have not a doubt in my mind that I will change the face of education in North America. I have not a doubt in my mind that I will sell 100,000 copies of my book. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm just getting started, right? Watch me. And when I'm in that space, it doesn't really matter other people's responses to me because I just feel so clear on the direction. And it's not about if it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. So am I prepared to sort of make that shit happen? And it's like, what's getting in the way? Is it somebody, Rhonda Britton told me this one time. She was a business coach for me out of Los Angeles, actually, for a little bit. She started the Fearless Living Institute, super bright. And she said to me, I said, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't know how to, like, what is in my way. And she just said, fear of success is fear of responsibility. Isn't that good? That's what I start to feel. Even in this last year, this company of mine has grown, exponentially. We have 13 employees. We launched a book that we hoped would sell 1,000 copies. And we've now sold over 35,000 copies, not in the first year, out of my basement. We're speaking now around North America, and it's going faster than I would have anticipated. So whenever I'm putting the brakes on, it's me doing that. She said to me, gosh, fear of success is just fear of responsibility. This is what happens to me. I feel like I'm going to let down my employees. Like, what if all of this shit falls apart? What if I get on stage and I get like critical feedback? And when the critical feedback comes, I have a visceral response and I'm like, this is it. See, I knew it was going to be over. Here it is. I think that all of that is just fearful of just the vastness that this could turn into. And that this gift that I feel like so lucky to have in some ways, the responsibility with that is massive. And so I think that really is the derailing of the well-being. And so then what is the response to that? It is, how do you stay in your space bravely? Because the definition of doing something and being brave is that doing something where you can't predict the outcome. That's what brave is. Because it's not brave if you can predict how it's going to end. And anything that we do in this entrepreneurial space is brave. I don't have a clue what I'm doing, right? Yeah. Most days, I'm a psychologist. If you want to talk to me about relationships and trauma, I feel very qualified to do that. Do I feel qualified to run a business, lead a team? We didn't even look at our financials until 6 months ago. And I'm embarrassed to say, like my husband would be like, did you pay taxes on, I was like, fuck, I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean you don't have a legal contract drawn up for all of the places you're speaking? And I was like, yeah. And so when you get into this entrepreneurial space, this is what I love about it, is that you have to become good at everything. And if you're passionate about it, it's not work. It's exciting. Curiosity is like, I'd rather do many things other than listen to my accountant, but this is pretty cool to be like, okay, so what do I have to do? Who do I have to get in place to assist me in that process? Because that's not my jam. Give me a stage, give me something to write. I got it all day long. But all of those things is really cool to orchestrate. And so well-being for me is when I feel that vibration, when I feel that, let's go. I got to write this. I got to do that. Oh, and then it's funny because then the ideas come. So alignment and well-being really, really coincide for me.
I love that you brought this up, and especially in the context of being an entrepreneur, because for me, the struggle has been, I take the time off, I get reconnected, I get realigned. I'm not having to worry about so much. Maybe I have the space now to just be. So you pretty much know what puts you in that space of well-being and that alignment. So how do you combine that with the everyday pressures of entrepreneurism, like of the things that you're having to learn and do every day? Like, how do you, sometimes it's juggling being a mom and then having to do work. And then you're like, I have to work till midnight tonight. Like, that must take its toll somehow. So how do you stay in that either mental state or that alignment where you're like, okay, this is the purpose. And so because I'm aligned to it, I can do all these busy things and live in the everyday part of life, but still have that sense of well-being. I hope that makes sense.
Oh, it totally does. And the word that just rises for me so clearly is grace, because the answer is, I don't. The answer is every day I either drop the ball with my kids, or I drop the ball with my business, or I think, holy shit, I should have done this, or okay, I haven't worked out. Oh, I profess to people all the time, you should be practicing gratitude, stay and find your joy. And I'm like, where's my journal? Oh, good. My last entry was December 31st. Cool. So I often feel like a fraud because I talk this talk all the time. And where I feel most in alignment is when I walk it. So there is never an end game to this, right? I never arrive. There are moments where I feel this part is so solid. This is the fun of it for me. This is where I get my most joy, is how do I keep getting to this place of whatever balance is. And I have to say this, we made a t-shirt that we sell now, and it sells crazy because we just say this all the time. Balance is bullshit. You will never be in balance. It is always like something that it's not an end game. If I sort of feel like I have this rock star parenting moment, and we have twins who are 7 almost, and Asher's going to be 10 this year. I'm a child psychologist, and I am messing my children up. I'm very sure. Like I probably only get it right 30% of the time. Okay. I don't have a friggin' clue. And I wrote a book about it. Okay. There's that. There's keeping a marriage. What I want more than anything is to be an exceptional mom and an exceptional wife. Those are where I start every single day, and I fail 70% of the time, but that's my jam, and I'm not doing awesome on those things. And then there's other days where, oh my gosh, we look at the structure for like our email strategy or our event structure and the sales of the book, and I'm like, oh my, we single-handedly killed that without any idea about what we're doing, right? Wow. I love that. And then there's the next moment where I'm like, nobody's been on the shop for like, what are we doing? How come we're not promoting that? Why is our social media following? Why have we dipped 33%? Like why? Oh my God, I didn't think about that, or I didn't look at that. So the balance for me is really the perpetual need to move forward, the desire to continue to try to get as much things at one given moment in alignment.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And then as you were saying that, it also is kind of like just being present with whatever you're dealing with, right? Like I'm sure when you're a mom, you want to just be a mom in that moment. When you are dealing with business stuff, you want to just be in that moment. And that is definitely something that I need to work on. And it's funny because I talk about it as well, like how to balance or how to stay in well-being. But it's like you said, there's never an end destination with anything we do. And so I love how you said that. You mentioned being passionate about what you're doing, and you are so passionate in your book, Kids These Days. I got the audio version of it. And when I saw that you were the voice, I'm like, I have to get this because you in person are just so magnetic and so fun. And I'm like, this is great. And it clearly shows that you are just extremely passionate about what you're doing. And there was this one moment where you mentioned a traumatic event that happened in a community nearby. And it was that moment that sparked essentially like the path that you're on now and the work that you're doing now. Like it seemed like it was the seed for you. So how did you know that you wanted to be an advocate and leader for families and entrepreneurs as well? Because I feel like what you talk about can help so many people just beyond the immediate work that you do. And would you say that was the moment, or like how, because a lot of my listeners struggle with knowing their passion, knowing what to follow, what to do in their life. So that's kind of the context I'm coming from.
I love it. And people ask me this all the time, right? I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what my passion is. Listen, it's not an entity. It's not like you find it and you're like, oh my gosh, I got it, right? And so again, that word grace, give yourself some grace. What I really want you to think about is just sit for a second and resonate with what brings you joy. If I were to ask you, give me something that you're thankful for. If you were to stay in a space of gratitude, what brings you gratitude, right? And what brings you joy? And when I start to think about those things from a very early age, and it was a teacher in high school who really brought this home for me when we had a massive tragedy in our small community. I don't remember what she said or anything about what she taught us, but when a high school kid in our class was killed, I remember where she was standing when she told us about Neil. I remember what she was wearing. I don't remember what she said, but I remember how she made us feel. And that was the first moment that I think I started to resonate with this idea that we as humans have this capacity to evoke such a necessity. Ram Dass says this, it is just the whole thing for me. We are all just here walking each other home.
I love that.
We are all just here walking each other home. So I often am in this place of thinking, oh my gosh, give it. How do we figure this out together? And everybody is so disconnected at this point. that it is as simple and as complex as this. If you want to increase the relationships in your life, if you want to find your joy and passion, start to make eye contact with people in your community. Start to light up when you see somebody. Like, what would happen? Your husband comes home tonight and you are waiting at the door and you say to him, "How was your day?" His first response, I mean, I don't know anything about your marriage, but my sense is your first response, as would be my husband, is like, what the fuck? Who died? Right? What? Are you loaded? Like, because you're only this nice to me when you're drunk. Like, what is going on? Right? And here's the thing: the people we love the most are suspicious when we're kind, because we're in such a state of disconnect. We're in such a state of wearing busyness as a badge of honor, of, trying to find our joy, find our purpose, that we just get so disconnected from the one thing we're wired for, which is human connection. It is not something we're good at unless you practice it. And the more disconnected we become, because we have false entities of human connection on our iPads and our phones that our parents, particularly our grandparents, never had. They had to go face to face with each other. Their weekends were spent playing cards or at dances or socials where they would engage with each other. The square footage of the house that your grandfather raised your parent in, compared to the square footage of the house that you live in now, is massive. And they were forced to do this thing that we're wired for biologically, face-to-face connection. That's where we find purpose and joy, where we collaborate and communicate with other human beings, because that's why we're here. We're all just here walking each other home. And so one of the things, if you're struggling significantly with, why am I here? What's my purpose? What's my why? I mean, Simon Sinek talks about this all the time. For me, it really is sinking into the people who resonate the most with your soul, spending more time with, connecting to. What are you most thankful for right now? When I think about this, even in my own life, like what brings me the most joy is no longer drinking with friends or partying or staying out late. It is small dinners with the people I love the most, with our kids playing in the background, dreaming about how we're going to change the world, eating good food, drinking good wine, and being like, oh, I got an idea. Or, oh my gosh, we can really shift the face of mental health if we think about it like this. Oh my gosh, what about, okay, therein lies my passion. I enjoy time with my children. I'm a child psychologist. I'm not a huge fan of kids. That is not particularly where I'm joyful, okay? And I will be the best, the most exceptional mother I can be. But where I get my purpose, my passion is really, and for some people it is homeschooling their babies. Some people it is, running a day home because they just love to engage in that process. That's not my jam. That's not my jam. I'm a child psychologist who always wanted to be a mom, and I love my children to death. They are not my favorite.
I love how honest you are. I love that.
I guess it's a little bit, right, about, okay, so alignment of well-being and resonance. Do not doubt it for 1 second that the answer is here. The more disconnected you become, the less aligned you are. And when you slow down, the answers rise. And part of our biggest issue we face right now is, how do we just be? I do a lot of work in trauma and PTSD. I work with first responders a lot. All of my training, I was on a locked psychiatric inpatient unit for kids. That's where I worked for 10 years at our local children's hospital here. And so much of the treatment for people who have had traumatic experiences has nothing to do with the experience itself. It's all about the encoding of the message visually in your body. Right? It's how do we slow down and get that sense of contentment and safety again in our own physical space, in our own physical body. That is the soul work to therapy. If I can manage to get the head and the heart connected again, just really back into this space of resonating, it is always interweaved with Eastern philosophy around this idea of just trust it, slow down. We're all just walking each other home. The answer is there. It is so easy to be able to just be like, you know what? All I need you to do for now is to show up at your local coffee shop and give a compliment, is to look at your mom in the eye, is to slow down and, remember why you got involved with your partner. Even if you're divorced, why did you decide to have children with them at one point in your life? Slow that down. And sometimes it's really difficult because it's so hard to sit with that stuff. But therein lies the answer.
Oh, wow. You said so many powerful things. And just that idea of slowing down. Sometimes it's hard for me to just allow that to happen. Sometimes it's like, okay, too much to do. But you're right that when you do allow that stillness, the ideas do rise, and what's important that's exactly what happened to me over the holidays. And it's like a confirmation that that should be the priority. And I'm also thinking of people in my audience who work from home or have a different way of working. And I work from home as well right now. And it's just, how do you get better at connection when you aren't in an environment yet that can foster in-person conversations or different things? And I know you mentioned getting together with friends. So obviously there are things that we can plan and do, but would you have any specific advice beyond that for people who work from home, or just more or less the same?
I think we have to be very respectful of this, transition in our ease to communicate and stay connected to people remotely. We have some people on our team that are remotely connected. It is very important to me, and this is not always true to everybody, but very important to me that as I grow my team, that we have the capacity to be face-to-face with each other at some point, at least one time a month. And so it often forgoes me hiring somebody who maybe would be much more qualified or would be amazing. But the benefit of having interpersonal connection to another human being trumps everything. Because what happens from a physiological perspective is that my cortisol decreases when I'm in the same physical space as another human being. So if we were doing this interview here, like if, let's say I had to fly to New York, okay, it is minus 4,000 here today. So we probably should have done this in New York. We would be able to resonate so much differently just because of the neurological changes that happen in us. Now, this allows us a process that we wouldn't have even dreamed possible, because we would have maybe had a phone call. We would have, so the benefits, technology isn't the enemy. And in fact, we can use it so beautifully. What happens is when we use that as the interception to face-to-face connection, because it's easier. When we always use it as a crutch, because I can hide behind this. I don't have to worry about whether, my pants look great, or whether I'm in a place where like, oh my gosh, how do I socially come into your home? And do I take my shoes off? And do I do all those things? I'm not going to get good at those things though, unless I continue to do those and foster those on my team, in my relationships. And so if and when I do my work remotely or from home, or I webcast, or I do those things, as much as possible, anytime I build a relationship with the school division, before I do training with them, I always want to be face-to-face if I can. And if there's any opportunity, and sometimes when we're doing this stuff online, is it beneficial to meet first face-to-face? Oh my gosh, huge. If you have the capacity to go in, if you have the capacity to meet for coffee or for lunch. And if you don't, that's okay. I mean, this is the age we live in. It's beautiful. Never underestimate the power of face-to-face connection, because we know physiologically, I started to say that our cortisol decreases, our oxytocin and our dopamine increase when we're face-to-face with another human being that you cannot reciprocate over an email or a text. So FaceTime increases that potential, because I can read your facial expressions. You can see how some of the innuendos aren't made there as strongly as they might have been over text. If I, type something to you all in capitals, you're not sure if I'm just super passionate about that or if I'm pissed off, Yeah, exactly. And so it just takes so much stories in your head. Brene Brown talks about this all the time. Like, what is the story in your head? It becomes so much easier to decipher that if we're in the same room. And I can say to you, hey, did you just mean that? Or like, are we cool with that? Because I didn't know what you meant. So I think when you're trying to work for somebody, with somebody, particularly when you're going to build something that you're super passionate about, it becomes really critical on how we can have at least face-to-face connections online, at the very least, and if whenever possible, to be in the same physical space.
I love that. And I definitely, thankfully, there are a lot of like networking groups, and like after talking with you, I'm like thinking to myself, okay, I got to be super excited now when my husband comes home. I mean, I typically am like, I'll say hi, but I'm just like, oh, there's so many good things that you're saying, and it's doable. That's the thing. Like, what you're saying to make that big change in our lives is not rocket science, like you said, and it's not going to cost a lot of money. It's actually something that I can do right now, the second. You can do right now, the second. I think that's amazing and so powerful. As far as technology, like you said, it's a great and wonderful thing, but we probably need boundaries, right? Just not with technology, but just in general, maybe emotional boundaries, maybe other kinds of boundaries. Are there certain kinds that you would recommend that we create in our life so that we can connect better with ourselves, with other people? And what would those look like?
it's so funny you say that word, because I've struggled so significantly with that word boundaries. And I've evolved so much, I think, in my career as a clinician over that, because I mean, I would read Brene all the time about, like, she's just so clear on the importance of boundaries. And, you know, I had an advisor in grad school who was like, no, you have to be so clear about this. And I was like, no, like, this is what makes me great, is that I'm often available, or I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, if you're struggling significantly, let's talk about it. Like, send me a text. I understand that, you know, when we're working through trauma or hard things, it doesn't happen between Monday and Friday, 9 to 3. And I think what's really cool is that as I've gotten a little bit older, I start to realize, you know, Brene talks a lot about this clear is kind. How do I be really clear about what I need from you and what I want from you, which does not trump my capacity to be available or connected to you?
Yeah.
When that is a clearly established relationship between the two of us, it makes it easier for me to say, you know, my love, here's the 5 things you can do before we get connected, but I am available on, you know, Tuesday morning at 9, and I cannot wait to connect to you then. Right? It's not if we're going to do it, it's how that is so critically important. How do we set up those? It's the discipline between, I could be at work at 6 o'clock every morning and writing and doing all kinds of things. How do I make sure that, no, I'm better for my babes if I stay home and get them off to school, if I get a workout in, which means I have to get up at 5, I'm there to start breakfast at 6:30, and then we deliver to, you know, whatever that is. And that always doesn't work for me. That's ideal. Like, we get that done 3% of the year. But how do you sort of know where you're going to function at your best self and do your best to get there every day that you can?
Yeah. And so does that mean basically being clear with yourself about what you need? Like, how, especially like if you have to be clear with other people, are there like certain steps or like questions or things that you abide by when you're like, okay, how do I make sure that I'm being clear in this moment or this situation?
Love it. I think there's twofold. I think one of the biggest mistakes any of us make is not being clear with what we want and what we need. So that's the internal stuff that has to happen first. Like, you're never going to get there if you don't know where you're going. So the importance of, even, you know, my husband and I were talking about this morning, right? I have, of course, 87 gratitude journals. I have bought every Rachel Hollis Start Today journal, and it doesn't help you if it sits on your desk. What is it that you're going to accomplish today? What space are you putting yourself in? What are you hoping for doing? And so that, again, give yourself grace, but as much as you can, what are you working on today? Who do you want to show up as today? And when you get some space, honestly, 5 minutes, get some clarity on that before you step into your day. It exponentially changes the way that you show up. Secondly, clear is kind for me is really about excavating the unsaid. So the best leaders on the planet have the capacity to excavate the unsaid, which means, you know, intuitively, when I'm not feeling it with my teammates, or something has went off, or I have pissed somebody off, or I'm wondering if they're mad at me, how do we excavate the unsaid and do less of this? Okay? We're so inclined to fix and to get it and to offer strategies and solutions and suggestions. And what we don't do very well is sit with the hard stuff. And there is so many theories in my world of psychology. There's some guys out of Seattle that do this really well. They talk about sort of regulating emotion, or really being in this place where you just hold space. And you do things like this: tell me more. Those 3 words, man, will change your life, I promise you. Tell me more, particularly when you want to fix or give a strategy, right? You've got a solution for a client. And every time you give them a solution and they say, yes, but I've tried that. Yes, but what else? Then you need to shut it, step back, and hold some space. Tell me more. What am I missing? What's the hardest part? What do we need to be clearer on? Excavating the unsaid, because you're missing something. And when we try to fix all the time, I mean, imagine this, it's even worse with our partners. You know, they come home at the end of the day, we're not okay if they're not okay, period. So if they come through the door and they're like, oh, I'm so tired, my job is so hard, I should have quit, you know, and you're like, oh, for God, seriously, do you want to know, do you want me to tell you what is hard work? I will tell you what's hard work. Okay. I just launched a book. I got 13 employees. I got puke in my bra, and I don't know where the 2-year-old is. Okay. Because I want him to be better. So I'm trying to fix. and demean him, shame him into this capacity to feel that I am actually the worst off here. So you better pull your shit together or we're both screwed. Like, essentially, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I have a very hard time holding space for him, because if he's not okay, I'm not okay. I want to fix him. Right. Mm-hmm. The quickest way I get him up to the top to being regulated is to hold space. And when I say, what happened today? Tell me more. And in my head, I might be like, oh, like, you fed cows today. Woo. Like that. Not helpful when we come out of the gate with that. But I want to say, tell me more, right? What was the hardest part? I'm glad you're home. It's crazy how quickly, when somebody holds space for you, that you then get back into connection. It's this dance often that we talk about, even in marital therapy, often about like sort of perception and intention, and how do we sort of pull this space of, holding space so that you can regulate emotion enough to regulate me. And when you get to how do we sort of do this dance? Does that make sense?
It does.
And this works very much in an employer-employee relationship as well, because it's really like, how do I just make sure, Stephen Covey said this, seek first to understand before being understood. Mm. And it is so powerful, right? Particularly in this very space of, female entrepreneurs, where we're really trying hard to be like, no, I got this shit. Like, here's what you need to do. And how about you try this? The most powerful people on the planet, the best leaders on the planet, seek first to understand before being understood. Excavating the unsaid.
Wow, that is unreal and amazing. And you hit it so perfectly, because I've had so many situations where, had I been like, tell me more, or had I excavated more the unsaid, because you, like you said, you can feel that energy. You can absolutely feel it when something is not clicking or just not being, like, anyways, it's just, yeah, very powerful, very powerful. So I'm going to switch gears just for a little bit. I was curious, you talked a little bit about some of the things that you like to do in the morning to kind of center yourself. And I'm huge on morning routines. A lot of my following is huge on morning routines and just habits in general. So do you have a morning routine? And I know it might change from day to day, but what does it generally look like, and how does it serve you?
Okay, awesome. So I'll tell you my best morning routine, and this, you need to know that this happens maybe like not nearly as much as it should. Okay. So if I have my ideal morning routine, I know I'm on my game when I start my day with water. And I always, before I even set my feet on the floor, I try to be very thankful for one or two things. What is it that I'm most thankful for today? Gratitude is, we hear about it so often that it's getting so watered down, but it is the single most powerful thing you can do to get centered, because it requires getting your prefrontal cortex online. So it requires pulling your limbic system, quieting your limbic system, so you regulate emotion. Because to be in gratitude, I have to think with my prefrontal cortex, which is like our higher order brain. I have to really like put those things together. Like, okay, just a second. I can't just be like, oh, I'm thankful for. I have to seriously get into my head about, oh yes, okay, I have this, and it's Wednesday. Tomorrow I got this. Oh my gosh, Aaron and I are going out on a date on Friday. Okay, got that. And even in the midst of chaos, it provides us this sense of like, okay, even, I say this to moms who have lost children, to, people who are stage 4. I know that there's a shitstorm right now. Tell me one thing you're thankful for. There's always something. If ideally, and I know the research on this is massive, if I can move my body before I start a day. So 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I often, every summer we train for a race. We do, my husband and I, trail race. And so I'm 5 foot frigal and he's like 6'2". I basically crawl on the trail and I meet him at the end. So he's usually 2 or 3 beer in before I ever get there. I love it. I've always been active. I've always struggled with my weight, and I've always never been like, I'm 5'2" on a Ukrainian chassis. I'm sure I could have birthed like an entire village of children. Like, I am solid Ukrainian girl, But I love when I am active, when I start my day with intention and gratitude, and I have my water and I move my body. That sets me up for the most significant success that ever can be. And it is as simple as it is complicated. And it's not about staying motivated. It's about staying disciplined.
I love that. You're right, because not every day we're not going to want to do something, but it's getting into that habit of still doing it anyway and not waiting for
exactly.
the be there. So I love that. You've mentioned a few times about emotional regulation.
Yeah.
If someone's like, what the heck is that? What do you mean by that?
Such a great question. Okay. So if you own a kid or teach a kid or love a kid, you're an aunt, an uncle, a godparent, our only job on this planet is to teach children emotional regulation, which essentially means how not to lose your friggin' mind. Okay.
AKA not to lose.
Exactly. Right. So like when I ask parents what they want for their children, they generally tell me one thing: I want them to be happy. And then it's usually followed by 3 or 4 other things, which is I want them to do well in school. I want them to make good friends. I want them to give back somehow in this community. You can't do any of those things if you're emotionally dysregulated. If you lose your friggin' mind over everything, you will struggle to be happy. You will struggle to have good social relationships, and you will struggle to do well in school to the best of your cognitive ability. Okay. And emotional regulation, interestingly, is not something that you can be told how to do. You have to be shown how to do it. So when you bring a baby home from the hospital, the only way that they sort of let you know that they need something is they lose their friggin' mind. They cry. And big people respond again and again and again by soothing, trying to solve that problem and teaching them, showing them how to regulate emotion. We do this a lot with babies. Shh, okay. And so I'm externally regulating again and again and again, giving you the neural capacity to do that on your own when I'm not there. The more I do that in the physical presence of a child, as they launch into toddlerhood and they go to school and they do all those things, they're developing strategies of self-regulation, emotional regulation. And the only way you learn how to regulate emotion is somebody's got to show you, they can't tell you. And we often try to do that when with our partners or when our kids get bigger, but never in the history of telling somebody to calm down has calm down ever worked.
Oh gosh. Right? Yes.
We got to show them, right? And we know this when kids are little or they don't have any language. We do a lot of this. Okay. Shh. But the bigger they get, we try to fix it all the time. Enough, calm down, use your words. And we never outgrow this capacity to be emotionally regulated by another human being because we're wired for connection. And so when hard things come, typically we're all just here walking each other home, and we need somebody to do that hard stuff with us. So whether you're 2 or you're 92, when things come, disrupt your soul, we often know that there's somebody or something, even a memory, the older we get, that we can lean on, who will say, okay, you got it. We got this. We're going to be all right. And that's emotional regulation. You can only make good decisions, clear decisions, when you're emotionally regulated. And from a neurological perspective, it is acting in that prefrontal cortex that sets humans apart from any other mammal. And often when we get in a trauma state or when our kids are losing their friggin' mind, they're operating only from their limbic system, which is their internal brain, the most primitive part of your brain. And any attempt to regulate or calm or to meditate or to relax or to deep breathe is actually an effort to put that prefrontal cortex back on. That's where all of our strategies come. That's where all of our capacity to know and to be kind and compassionate and have empathy, that's where all of those things live. You're not born with those things. Somebody has to show you how to do them. And the more somebody shows you how to be kind and compassionate and empathic and how to repair relationship, then you develop those in your prefrontal cortex. And you only have access to those when you're calm. So that's emotional regulation. And so when you get dysregulated, let's say you get in a car accident on your way home today, somebody sideswipes you in New York and you're like, what? Oh my God. You need somebody to be like, okay, Francesca, look at me. It's okay. It's okay. You're okay. They're okay. We're going to figure this out. And usually there's somebody or something. Animals often do this for people, right? They just, the sight of their dog or their cat gets them in a space because we're wired for connection.
Oh, I just love that so much. And so if someone wasn't shown how to regulate, would you say that, like you were saying, meditation, petting your dog or your cat, like, are there any things that people can use that would help them to learn, even if they weren't shown how to regulate?
Yeah. So here's the cool thing. You're never too old to learn this stuff, right? And so oftentimes when there's a significant trauma history early on, it becomes really difficult, or we have a higher hill to climb to be able to get back at learning how to regulate emotion, because we've been so dysregulated in the environment that we've been raised in. But it's never too late. I wouldn't do this work. I wouldn't pour my heart and soul and spend time away from my own babies if I didn't believe, any of this is ever too late. And really what's so important is oftentimes we have reparative experiences, even if we had a difficult home life. If you can recall for me a teacher, a coach, a grandparent, somebody in your community, a neighbor who lit up when they saw you or connected to you or walked you home through some hard things, right? Those, you've learned those regulating skills from many people. I mean, this African proverb of "it takes a village" is so true, because we often get most dysregulated with our children, because we're so invested. We're so in the game. I'm so much better with other people's children, right?
Yeah.
I'm a child psychologist. I wrote a book on how to do this, and I lose my mind with my own children on a daily basis. And if your baby comes to me and is really dysregulated and whiny and throwing shit around, I'm like, okay, come here, honey. When my own child does that, I'm like, one! Because I get dysregulated around my own child not being able to be the parent, or they're not acting the way I wanted them to be, or they're not showing up in the world the way I want them to show up in. So I get dysregulated quicker. When it's your kid, I'm like, well, so I'm going to send him home anyway. So I come here. It's fine, because I have access to my prefrontal cortex, right? I can walk your kid home anytime, and you would do the same for mine. So it really becomes about staying connected in this big old world, because there's going to be so many things that knock us off our game. That's kind of this whole purpose of life, is we get dysregulated. The only way we learn how to work through hard stuff is when we have the experiences of going through it. There's no way to get around it. You got to go through it.
I love that, because we're all walking each other home, right? I mean, that's the Thank you so much for taking the time. And is there anything else that you would add, whether it's the one thing you would tell someone who isn't showing up the way they want to, or just anything else in general that you feel like you want to leave?
A couple of things. It's not an end game. And so just be really careful about who you surround yourself with, because I think I never underestimate the power of getting derailed in this process, and how we can be very steadfast and brave in our approach to things, one day, one moment, and just how critical it is to be very careful about who you sit with. If you sit with the winners, the conversation is different. What social media you ingest, right? Who is on your feed? Who are you listening to? Are you driving to work on talk radio versus podcasts that are like, no, listen, we are here to serve, and I need the best from you, and you can change the world just by showing up at your local 7-Eleven, or I need this from you. It's going to give you that space to be able to be amazing. And so it's a constant reminder, even, after writing a book and speaking and doing all these great things that fill my soul, that I have to practice, or I have to get back to every single day. We were just talking before we started here today, like so many days this last week, as we get back into the groove of things, that I'm like, oh, this is too, I just want to eat toffee and watch sports, and it really takes being surrounded by people who are like, okay, slow it down. Let's start one sweet step at a time. That gets me back in the game. And then I start to feel aligned. Then I start to feel this sense of purpose and passion and, all of those things again. And so it's a universal process. It's a universal process that we're wired to do hard things. Whatever you have on your plate right now, you're wired for it. I have no doubt in my mind. You only survive those hard things so much better when you remember this. We're wired for connection.
Thank you so much for showing up for us and as yourself, and just everything. Your energy and your spirit is just amazing. And I feel so lucky that we got to connect in person and now. And I want everyone watching this to find Dr. Jody Carrington online. If you want to let us know where they can find you, anything you have going on that they can look forward to.
Our website, I do Sunday Night Lives every Sunday night on Facebook and Instagram at 8 Mountain. And we have a website, and our social media following is, I think everything is Dr. Jody Carrington. And yeah, we speak. I'm at a number of different conferences in the US coming up. So all of our speaking schedule is up on the website. So I would love to see you and have you part of our community. If they love on you, I know I'm going to love them. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now it's time for an affirmation. I feel safe within the space of myself. I courageously and playfully follow my curiosities and embrace what feels good to me. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview. Take a look at the show notes if you want to read the affirmation you just heard, connect with Dr. Jody, and links to everything we mentioned. If you learned something new today, share a screenshot of the episode with your takeaway on Instagram and tag @FindYourGoodSpace. I love resharing. If you think other people would benefit from this information, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. See you soon.